off on another mobile repair on a Honda Accord Cross Tour. Complaint was some grinding noise while driving. I already went and looked at it the other day. Need some brakes. Little metal on metal. So we've already loaded up tools and we're headed that way. Alright, so we made it here and already got the car jacked up. And really if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, this was the one that was definitely metal to metal, and of course you'll see it was on the inside of the rotor. See, outside doesn't look bad. Can I get in there? I'm going to show you how thin the pads were, but I'll show it to you when you get it off. But also, this has wheel locks. Most cars these days do. Usually, it can be tricky trying to find where the key is. A lot of places that do tire rotations or things of that nature may forget to put it back, put it in a different spot. A lot of times, the owner doesn't even know they have one, but usually it's in the glove box. And of course, this one was. So, easy peasy find there. Awesome. So, what we're going to do now is we're just going to do it one wheel at a time. Easier on myself. Don't have to jack up all the way around. Yeah, do one, set it down, go around, do another one. But we're going to start with the one making the noise. Okay, so I have a flip socket here. One side's 13/16, the other is 3/4. This being a newer car, that's probably 19 millimeter, but 3/4 is the same pretty much. And of course, 13/16 would be the same as 21 millimeter. But I brought the standard size, so 3/4 is what fits on the lug nut and the key. So, also have it attached to a fairly long breaker bar to make this easier for me to get off, because I do not have electric impact anymore. Yeah, there we go. Alright, let's get all these off. And we'll set this right here. We'll use this for a seat. Alright, and to make this easier, since all the bolts and stuff are here, I'm gonna turn it on for a minute and turn the steering wheel so all of that comes out here. It makes it easier accessible. Now I have more access. Alright, let's see. What size do we have here? I was guessing, I'm going to say 14. There's 2 bolts here for the caliper. They hold it to the bracket. Actually, looks like, yep, that one there, and that one there. Wouldn't you know, it's a 14. I do like these long wrenches. This is actually the Icon brand. Harbor Freight. They weren't that expensive. I've actually owned another brand of these. Snap-on at one point in time. They were like $400. These are, I don't know, they were like $70 maybe for the whole set from Harbor Freight. But with them being longer, you know, it helps with breaking things loose easier. You could just still use a socket and a hand ratchet, or if you have an electric impact, that's probably the best way to go. But I have yet to buy another one since my last one was stolen in a truck. Alright, so see the back side is spinning too, right here. So I'll have to hold that with a different size. So doing that down here, let's see. Nope, this side broke loose without that one spinning. So I'll have to grab that. let's see. We'll use the one size fits all crescent wrench. I'm sure I could get the actual specific size wrench to go on that, which, well, this is every size, so we'll just use that. Alright, got those off. Okay, now this is, you know, it'll wiggle back and forth, but it's going to be hard to pull off because, well, the brakes are still engaged a little bit. So, and if you look in here, this is actually the rotor, the little rusty thing you see. That is a brake pad with, right there, that's actually the backing plate to a brake pad. You see that little gap between there? There should be quite a bit of pad there. There's absolutely none. You look over here on the other side, you can see there's a little bit. Holy shaky hand. There you go. Just a little bit on that. So, what you typically do is usually use a big flathead, or in this case, a little pry bar. And I'll stick it between there, and I'll pry to get it to push, and I'll show you when I get it off, but to push the piston back in the caliper so I can get this off. Alright, so got that in there. I'm just gonna pry. Just a little at a time, and that's just enough to get those pistons right there to squeeze back in, just enough to slide it off with ease. I'm going to just let this hang right here. It's not real heavy, and then we'll pull off the brake pad, or really just the backing plate because there's no pad left. Yeah, that has seen better days for sure. What does the rotor look like? Yeah, you can see it's all ground up pretty good. This one's going to get replaced. We'll pull this pad off. It's got a little bit left. No pad, little pad. Let me show you what new ones look like. Okay, so here's a new pad. Significantly thicker than this one, right? Obviously thicker than that one. That's your friction material there. Pad surface beveled to make, it's where it makes contact there. Well, it would actually sit like so. So there you can see it's definitely been time for brakes for a little bit, but there's no squeal tab on those pads. Not sure if it had one and it broke off. Let's see. Yeah, I don't see. So if you see on this one, it has this little tab that protrudes down past the backing plate. So as this friction surface wears down to right there, that will begin to touch and usually makes a high-pitched squealing noise. You know, the one that when you're hitting your brakes as you're slowing down an intersection, you kind of hide so no one looks at you when your car's making the noise. Yeah, that's usually it, and that's usually telling you have your brakes checked. So I don't see it on this one. Sometimes pads only have it on one side, so maybe when I get to the side it'll be over there. But now, since we're changing this rotor, I'll have to pull the caliper bracket off, and that's 2 bolts as well. It's these bigger ones. There's one there and one there. Let's see what size those are. It's exactly the same size as the lug nuts, so and use my same socket, 3/4 or 19 millimeter. And we'll use the same breaker bar that took the lug nuts off with. So the caliper, we're just gonna swing this up and just kind of, we'll set it right here for now, just to get it out of our way, and then we'll take those 2 bolts off. Alright, so I got that one out and got this one loose, and go ahead and take it off. They're pretty tight, so breaker bar would definitely be beneficial if you have one. And there we go. And these here are your caliper slides. We'll pull those out. They just slide out. I'll show you real quick. See, they just slide out. We'll clean these off and re-grease them. And then also as well, this here, these tins or the hardware, whatever you want to call them, sometimes anti-rattle clips. Our brake pads come with new ones, so these will be getting replaced as well. So, move that out of the way. These rotors, not all cars have these, but have these big Phillips head screws. 99% of the time, you cannot just stick a regular Phillips screwdriver in that hole and turn it by hand. You'll need a special tool called an impact driver. This, my friends, is an impact driver. It's spring loaded in here, so let me get this. And as you can see, these break pretty easy too. I'm pretty good at breaking them. I'm pretty good at breaking a lot of stuff. I try not to, but so, this bit, yeah, that fits in there pretty good. So you'll just stick it in there, and I have a persuader there, a little hammer. Essentially, you stick it in, and then you push down and you turn just a little bit, which tensions that spring in there. And when you tap the end of that or hit it, it kind of like an impact wrench will break that loose. Let me show you. So we're going to take this, stick it in there. Oh, look, it's already loose. Oh, that's awesome. So this is not that 99% of the time one, then that top one I turned out by hand, but and it's loose. So a little bit of impact that I did with the hammer, and this being spring loaded, allowed that one to break loose. Don't lose them, so they're going to go back in. This one I just turned out by hand, so most likely this has definitely been off before. And then it's still a little tight on there. Let's take the caliper, swing it back down. It's okay that it hangs a little bit by the brake hose. Technically, you don't want it hanging by the brake hose because it could stretch it out. So you can use bungee cord or some wire or whatever to tie it up to the caliper control arm, but it'll be okay for right now. But this is on here, so you take and smack the face of the head of the rotor. That should allow it to break loose. Try not to hit your studs or the threads, because yeah, that may make it a little bit harder to go back on. And there we go. One little tab did it. And it's off. What you're left with, this is just your hub. This right here, sorry, that's the end of your axle nut. So here is the back of the rotor. Yep, that is definitely making some noise. So we're gonna get the new one out. All right, so the new rotors will generally come bagged up and coated and a little bit of oil to prevent them from rusting while they sit on the shelf and wait for you to buy them. This one actually has a protective coating, this gray, on what's called the hat, and right here where the fins are to help it, to prevent it from rusting. You can see here's the old one. Here's the face of the hat. It's got some rust on it. It really isn't a big deal. Same thing in here. Probably a little bit more necessary up north, but if you can see through the wheels, it also kind of looks nicer when it's not all rusty. Sometimes those with the coating are maybe a few dollars more. For this instance, they were really the same price, so that's why we're using those. But the oil that's on here, I'm gonna blast her off with some brake parts cleaner. I'm gonna go ahead and hit all this too, just clean it up some, and then we'll get the rotor put on. Alright, so now we got the rotor on. I've sprayed brake clean on it. You can still see it a little bit on there. It's just drying. Get some of that off, or get all that oil off. Now, excuse me, we got to push the pistons back on the caliper. So this is a dual piston caliper. Most likely in the back it'll only have one, but most cars these days have at least two. When you push the brake pedal, this is the fluid comes in through that hose into the caliper, and then it pushes from the backside and pushes these out. The pad sits right here, the inner pad, and an outer pad would sit right here. Okay, so these pistons push out, which would make this one hit the rotor, and then it would pull this side to the other side of the rotor. Well, obviously, like you guys saw, these new pads are quite a bit thicker and would not fit in between here and the rotor surface. We've got to get these pistons back in here so we have all that room. Several different tools for this. I've actually owned quite a few, and like most tools do over time, they run away. So now, just going to use a C-clamp. Okay, it is sometimes a little difficult because you want to push them back even. If you have two C-clamps, you can run two, or you can tighten it down a little bit here, loosen it, move it over, tighten it down here. But you want to push those pistons back as even as possible so they don't, get cocked out sideways, which could be a big problem. Other thing you got to pay attention to is you get your brake line and that bolt. So, sometimes you can grab the whole back of the caliper, like I'll be able to on this side, but alright, let me get this set up. So, if you see, I have it just on the edge back here, and then I've got it in right there. Okay, and then all I'm going to do is tighten the C-clamp, and it's going to push this back in. And you can see right there that I've moved this side in just a little bit, and that side's still out, so we're going to reposition the C-clamp to the other side and squeeze it in too. Alright, I've moved that, or compressed that side down some. It is now equal with this side, and we'll take it in a little bit further, and we'll just repeat that back and forth process from side to side until I get that all the way down. Alright, now you can see that both these pistons are completely recessed back into the caliper bore. So now I can take my C-clamp off and put the caliper bracket, well, we'll clean and grease the slides on the caliper bracket. Since I forgot to bring my towels or anything with me, I do have toilet paper in my truck. I should carry some. You never know when emergencies happen. So we're going to pull these slides out, or these pins. That one goes on the top, and we're just going to clean it off. Voila, brand new. We're going to use this Permatex brake caliper lube and apply some new grease, yummy, on the slide pins. A little here, a little there. Doesn't have to be neat. It's no Picasso, just has to serve a function. And we're going to do that for both pins. And we'll stick them back in the caliper. There we go. Get the other side. Alright, we'll go ahead and hose off the caliper bracket too. Not a whole bunch, just a little bit. Just to kind of get maybe some of the excess brake dust off. And then we'll put our new hardware in. Okay, so like I said, this brake pad set came with new hardware, quite a bit shinier than the old one. Really nothing wrong with the old one. I mean, everything still seems to be pretty well in shape, but I mean, who knows? I don't how long this has been on there, so we're gonna put the new ones on there. And it just sits right in these little slots. Everything just falls right in. Oh. Just push it down in there. Little tabs right here. Slides over that. Same thing on that side. And here as well. That goes down. Looks like it should probably go in a little more. And there we go. That one's installed. We'll get the other one on, and voila. We're also going to take just a smidgen of this caliper grease, and we'll just put it where the pad rides. A little on the top and the bottom, and there, just a little bit. You don't need much, because this will also grab a bunch of brake dust, and you don't want that to happen either. Got those all looby-doobied up. Now we're just going to essentially reverse the order that it came off. We'll put the bracket on, we'll put the pads on, we'll put the caliper on. Then I'm going to do the other side and move to the rear. One quick thing I do want to point out before I get this side completely buttoned up. Do remember you did have this caliper off hanging. You may have twisted it around or whatnot. Make sure you don't have this brake hose twisted in circles where it pinches it off, because you won't get brakes if you do that. Also, there is a top and a bottom to the caliper. This here, this is just a cap that covers the bleeder. Okay, some cars may be missing the cap, but that bleeder should be at the top of the caliper, not the bottom. Granted, unless you actually open the system, that won't make too big of a difference for that, other than your brake hose would be severely twisted. But just know that when you put the caliper back on, this should be, again, the brake bleeder should be at the top. And just quick update, I am on the other side. Did want to show you this pad does have the squealer tab on it, like I showed you on the new ones. The other side did not. The new pads actually come with one on each side. So this one does have it, but you can see how far back it is. It still hadn't even been touching yet. I mean, this would have almost been metal to metal before it went squeaking on this side. So yeah, the new pads, that tab sticks further out, so it should allow them enough notice next time that they need brakes before they get metal to metal. So there you go. Just wanted to show that to you. I'm gonna get back to it. Okay, so we've made it to the back, and we're not replacing any rotors back here, so all we're going to be doing is pulling the caliper off, which is that bolt there, that bolt there. Those are both 12s. It was 14s up front, 12 millimeters in the back. And we're just going to do what's called a pad slap. I mean, it looks like, you know, there's grooves and stuff in here. You can't fill them. I will scuff the surface of the rotor up. Of course, we'll change the hardware, grease the slides, and then just stick new pads on it. So let's get started. Same thing as the front. I'm going to take and stick my little pry bar in here and get it down in there. Let's see where I can get between the pad and the caliper. You can see it came out right there. So I'm between the pad and the caliper. It's going to pull towards me, which is going to start to push that piston and the caliper in. Take that back out, where I can get this off. And this one has just one piston, whereas the front was a two piston, so we just got the one piston there that we have to press in, which will be the same as we did up front, except for we won't have to go back and forth. We're just going to press the one in. And it's also got this little hardware here, which this keeps the pad pushed up from here. So it keeps a little pressure on it, to try and keep them from rattling, which any rattling or vibration there also leads to noise. So but again, we're not gonna pull the bracket off. We're just gonna pull the pins out, grease those, change these little metal pins. This one's definitely on there good. Where did I put my pry bar? We'll just, you know, just hit it. Oh, well, it doesn't come off with the pad on there because, yeah, you're an idiot. Okay, and then these tins here, take off, and we'll replace those two. On the bottom, one on the top. Alright. And then, like I said, we're not replacing the rotor, so they don't have to come off, so we don't have to mess with these screws. Same thing with the bracket for the caliper. It doesn't have to come off, but we are going to clean the surface up on it. Little red roll-lock disc here. So the inner pad has this little claw contraption on the back, and that's what helps hold it into the piston. So these three prongs will go into the piston there. Which sometimes is easier said than done, but put a little looby-dooby on them, line them up, try and keep it straight, and just start shoving in, and it'll just fall into place most times. The other pad just will slide onto here. Let's put some grease on those. Remember, not a lot, just enough to, oh, you don't want to do that. You don't want to get it on your rotor surface. but you can see I did get it all scuffed up. Nice and clean, non-directional, directional pattern there. And again, the pad here, it just sits like that. Oh, and we almost forgot something. So I gotta pull that pad back out because this piece, this is the new one, sits down in there. So it just comes right out. No worries there. And this fiddle-faddle down in there. It slides under that side, and then just pop that side down under there and just kind of center it. There you go. So it's got a retainer that slides under that side. Same thing over there. And in these here, the pad pushes, or this pushes the pad on. Let's see if I can get this back in here one-handed. Oh. Perfect. Like that. Ta-da. And you can see the pad's resting on that. Oops. And the other side, this one, we'll do the same thing. Oh yeah. It's always fun when it does not cooperate. Okay, be back. Okay, so we got it in there. Pads, all the new hardware. It's all greased. Just gonna tighten her down. You don't have to torque it to Chicago, just needs to be tight. And I'm sure there is definitely a torque spec, because there's a torque spec for everything, but tight is the torque spec here. Alright, let's put the wheel on and call it done. Remember to put the wheel out key back where you found it. This one had a nice fancy little bag it came in. And we'll put it back in the glove box. That's where we found it. That's where we'll put it back at. The other thing you want to do after doing brakes, since you push the caliper pistons back, essentially you have no brake pedal right now. So if I was to hop in this car, start it and put it in reverse, which I'm about to because I'm going to test drive it, I would have no pedal, and it would be a panic because it would feel like no brakes, and I'd probably hit my truck that's back there. So we're going to push the pedal down. See, look, it goes all the way to the floor. What we're doing now is we're pushing all that brake fluid back into the caliper pistons, take up all the space that was there, and there we go. Now I have a brake pedal again. I can drive this car and not run anything. Let's go put it on a test drive. And voila, all is done. It stops. It doesn't grind. So we're gonna call that a wrap. Awesome. Oh, if you didn't know how to do brakes on an Accord before, maybe now you do. Don't be scared to do them, just get out and do it. It's fairly simple. Tools were pretty easy. I think it was a 14 and a 12, a C-clamp, big screwdriver, nothing major. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.